Hey everyone, welcome back to our React series. In the last video, we set up our environment and we also built our first component. And today, we are going to learn about a core concept of React, which is JSX if you're using JavaScript, or TSX if you're using TypeScript. So as you saw in the last video, we wrote HTML inside our JavaScript file. Now, by default, we cannot write HTML or CSS directly in JS files. Yes, we can return HTML as a string from JavaScript function, but not plain HTML like this. But in React, as you can see, we write all our HTML inside JavaScript files. In fact, you can also write CSS directly in your JS files. So how is that possible? Well, here comes the JSX. JSX stands for JavaScript XML, and similarly for TypeScript, TSX stands for TypeScript XML. What it does, it extends the JavaScript syntax, and it adds the capability of writing XML right in our JS files. What that means is you write normal JS code along with XML all in one file. It is not mandatory to use JSX for developing React applications. However, it is almost impossible to develop a React application without JSX. Now let me show you how our React code from previous lesson will look like without JSX. So let's comment out this code. Let's create a React element. So we can do that like React.createElement. And then what element we are creating? In this case, we are creating div from here. So I will write div. And then second argument is what class names, what IDs, or what properties we want in the div. Right now, our div is just simple div without any class ID or anything like that. So I will just use null. And then the third argument is the children of that element. In this case, we have two children. I will create first element, which is h1. So what I will do is, again, react.createElement. And this time we want h1. So I will write h1 here. And similarly, we do not have any properties of h1 here. So I will just pass null. And then the content of that element. So in this case, we have this welcome YouTube. I will just paste that here. And then we have another children of that div, which is this p tag. So I will create another element, react.createElement. This time we have p, and then again, no properties, so null, and then the content of p. So in this case, we have this content right here. So I will copy that and paste it here. Now let me format it. So if I just this, and then we got children like this. So this JSX code corresponds to this JavaScript code. Now, this is literally very simple example. Now imagine if you're working on a real world React application where you have, let's say, 50, 60 components, and all those components are interlinked with each other, and you are rendering list and all that stuff. Just imagine how difficult it will be to implement this way. So like I said, it is not mandatory to use JSX. You can write your React application this way as well, but it is almost impossible to write real React applications without using JSX. So if I now come to the browser and see, we have the same output like we had in the last video. So now if I come back and I make some changes, if I save it and come back to the browser, so we have the new output right here. So this is how we write React applications without using JSX. So now you might be thinking, why XML? Why not just simple HTML? Well, HTML is limited to a very specific number of tags, For example, H1, H2, up to H6 for headings, P for paragraphs, etc. But in XML, we can write all the HTML tags, plus we can also create our own custom tags as well. The XML is kind of a superset of HTML, and that's exactly what we need in React. We create components, and then we use those components in other components, and in HTML that's not possible. Let me give you a quick demonstration of that. So if I comment out this code and uncomment this code, so right now here we have the basic HTML tags like div, h1, p, so these things are fine. But now let's say if we create a new component called my component, and I got all this stuff from here, and I paste it here, and I export this component. Now, if I use that component here, now this my component is not an HTML tag. Now, if it was JavaScript HTML, then using my component like this was not possible because my component is not a valid HTML tag. But in XML, it is possible. And last but not least, browsers cannot understand JSX directly. So if I provide this code to some browser and ask it to compile it directly, it will not be able to, because for browsers, this file is a JavaScript file or TypeScript file, and it will not expect a TypeScript file or JS file to return HTML. It will give some syntax error or something like that, but it will not just compile it. So when we create a new React app using createElement like we did in our last video, it automatically adds a plugin called Babel, which is a compiler for JSX. So when we compile our React app, Babel takes all the JSX and convert it into plain JavaScript like this. And then browsers interpret this JavaScript like they normally do. And finally, TSX is basically same as JSX. It only adds TypeScript type checking on top of normal JSX. So if you're using React with JavaScript, you will be having app.jsx. But in this case, we are using TypeScript, so we have app.tsx. So that was our quick introduction to JSX and TSX, the building blocks for React components in JavaScript and TypeScript. In the next video, we will start building components and explore how to use props and state in React. So stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next video.